So welcome to Revit 2019 Demo 11. We're going to open up Revit 2019 Demo 10, but before we open it, I'm simply going to highlight it and I'm going to look at the file size. You'll notice that the file size is set to 10.5 megabytes. The file size is set to 10.5 megabytes because we've loaded families in, we've loaded windows, doors, all sorts of different file types into this database, and so this file's naturally going to grow. So you really should save the file on the hard drive and back it up with a USB drive throughout this class. Also, Revit is set to save backup copies of your saves, very much like AutoCAD's .bak system, so you may want to set the number of backup copies to 3 so your hard drive doesn't get filled up. So to look at this, what we're going to do is we're going to open up this file, and I'm going to hit File, Save As, Project, and you're going to notice that I don't have any backup files currently. It's just 1 through 10. But if I hit File Save, and then I open and do a Save As project, you'll notice that I got this journal or this little backup file in here. Once I get this backup file in here, notice it's duplicated the project size. So what ends up happening is it really eats up memory. So mine currently, if I hit Options, it has a maximum of 3 backups. I don't want to go any higher than that. If you go any higher than that and you're not worried about storage, it could help in the aspect of when it's saving these backups, but it's important to note that the more times that it saves, the larger the backups. And it's going to just create a lot of wasted space. So 0.001 was saved. So if I save it again as demo 10 and hit save again, and then hit save as project, I've now got 1, 2, and 3 backup files. Now, 3 is the latest, and you can check what the latest is based on the timestamp on each file. So 8:07 p.m., 8:10 p.m., and 8:11 p.m. So if for whatever reason this file became corrupted, it's going to go back to this file type and it's going to update that backup file. Now if I continue to save, so if I hit File Save, and File Save, and then do a File Save As project, it's now eliminating backup files, so it's always going to leave .001, but it went to 4, 5, and 6 and eliminated 2 and 3. So I've got 4 backup files here currently, and just understand that the most current is the largest number of the .00s. So we controlled this through the file options and set this to 3. The maximum backups default is 3. Now that you understand that the maximum file backups is set to 3 and how to adjust this, we're going to go ahead and get started with Demo 11. Demo 11, I'm going to save this as Demo 11 up front. So I just did a File Save As Demo 11. I'm going to get started and we're going to talk about Revit schedules. So under Revit schedules, we're going to create a door schedule. You can be in any view in the browser on the left here, the project browser. And if I scroll down or just go up to view, I don't want to scroll down, but I can. I could scroll down to schedules here. I could right click that and select schedules, like a new schedule here, or I can come up to view schedules, schedule quantities. And then once I've gone into schedule quantities, all of the categories of Revit are going to show up, and I'm going to look for doors because I want to create a door schedule. And we're going to take the defaults into the new schedule box. So default of door schedule, schedule building components, new construction, and hit OK. Once we've done that, we will set up the schedule to have the following columns. We want to add the family column, so we're going to select it and add parameters. If it's on the right, the category that's displayed will be in the schedule. We want to also select mark, so we're going to grab mark. You can use the control key to select more than one at a time. So we're going to hold control and we're going to click finish first and then hold control and grab frame material. And then we want to grab head height. And then we want to grab height. And then level. And we'll grab thickness, type comments, and width. And we're going to hit add parameters. Now you can see that my list is there. I can sort this list here as well, but we're going to go ahead and hit OK with what we have. Now what you'll notice is that in here, the family name's displayed. So if I drag this over, you can see that that's now illustrated correctly. And we can also add a few of the green building parameters, but we're not going to do that at this particular moment. Well, we can look and see if they're there. If we hit fields here and hit edit, we can look for heat transfer coefficient. Oh, okay, they are in here, so let's go ahead and add them. So we're going to add that one. And then the solar heat gain coefficient. So if I scroll down, solar heat gain coefficient, now those are added. So I'm going to hit OK. So we've added a couple green building parameters that are showing up to the right. So we can start to see what our heat transfer coefficient is based on the window or based on the door that's placed. If it's not illustrated, it's not in there. So garbage in, garbage out basically means if the family has junk in it, you're going to get junk out of it. If a finish is not selected, you're not going to have any sort of finish. If you don't have a frame material, you're not going to have a frame material. If you set it to something stupid, it's going to be something stupid. So garbage in, garbage out. So we want to add frame material to door number 1, and we're going to name it painted pine. So door number 1 in this one is here, and we're going to go painted pine. And I'm going to hit, that's under finish. And I want to set the, sorry, I don't want to set, let's look. We want to name the frame material. So I'm going to hit Control X and paste that here. And then I'm going to select finish, and I'm going to set to oak stain. Oak stain, all caps. And then under type comments, I want to set this to low VOC rated. Enter. Hit OK. All of those will be applied. So that has been applied to the type comments of that value. If I hit enter here, this is an instance-based parameter. So it's only going to change the instance. The type comments is going to change the type parameter for the door, meaning that this is not an instance-based parameter, it's a type parameter, meaning it's going to update all of the parameters for that door. And the reason for that is you could probably get different finishes for this particular door. You could choose different values. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to level 1. We're going to go to door number 1, which we don't have tagged. So let's go ahead and tag all of our doors. Annotate, tag by category. I can tag the door this way by turning off the leader. Or so if I place that there, I can hit escape twice and hit tag all doors. Door tags, apply, and now my doors are tagged. So I know that door 1 that I was editing, because that's the mark. And then I can see that because it's a database, from the schedule and the values that I put in, it updated the door. So now I have that in there. Now if I edit the parameter here and I go to type comments, you're going to notice that the type comments were updated here. So that's important to understand because it's a database that things are going to update, and you can kind of go back and forth between the schedule and between the elements that are modeled. The power is that if you set your schedules up correctly, you can edit your schedules to fill out the values in a form-based method to update the families. And then when you save those families to family files, it will actually save these values in with those particular types. Now, if I were to change this type to a 32 by 96, that type comment is now gone. So it's blank. But if I go back to 36 by 96, it's still there. So within the element properties, there's instance properties. You can see materials and finishes that were the instance properties. That's the database portion. You can see the identity data. So if I go under identity data, mark is in there. Comments and image, those are also part of this particular instance. Anything that's illustrated here is going to be for this instance of the door. And then what we're going to do is cancel and cancel. So I'm going to hit escape and escape. So you can carefully modify the information in object carries in the schedule as well. You can give custom company standard titles to your schedule columns. So if we go back to the door schedule, I could actually say name of door, or I could say manufacturer, or I could say doors. I can say whatever I want. It's not going to change the field that's selected, which is family. It's only going to change the title of the column. So that's something important to know. So we're going to right-click on the door schedule in the browser. So right here, right-clicking on the door schedule. We're going to go to Properties. So we can, oops, I turned that off. You guys will probably do that as well. So I'm going to the Formatting tab is what I'm looking for. So I'm going to left-click the door schedule rather than right-click it. You'll notice in Properties it displays. If I go to Level 1 and right-click, it's not allowing me to adjust the properties in that right click, but I could open it. And when I open it, my fields are now shown, but I want to look for the Formatting tab, which is this guy here. So if I hit Edit, there's my Formatting tab. One thing that I can also do is inside of the schedule itself, I can pay attention to what's going on up here, because what's going on up here adjusts what column I'm in. So if I wanted to change the font to this column, I could change it to say Calibri. We'll say bold, and it's only going to change that value. So I'd want to match that to others. I can reset it back as well. So right here, we're going to just kind of go through and change these to capitals just to see that it's very easy to manipulate to get it to show the way that I want. If I just tab through, it'll tab through each value, just like as if you were in Excel. So if I type in head height, level, thickness, type comments, width, we're going to leave these two for now just because they're long values and I don't feel like changing them right now, but you can go in and adjust that column. So moving on, we've renamed some fields. We actually want to rename them to be different than what the field is. So we're going to call this door style. Then I'm going to tab and I'm going to change finish to finish. Oops, this is actually the mark, so be careful of that. This is just finish. We want that as finished. We're going to change this to FR matte, and we're going to change this to head height, so we're not changing this one. Height, I'm just tabbing through. Floor number, tab THK, tab door type, tab notes. Width is set as width, and we actually want to change this to U value, and solar heat gain coefficient, SHGC. So those are all updated to show correctly. I had a typo in here, so always check to make sure you don't have a typo. And we're going to continue on. We're going to change the order that they show on the schedule to this. We want the door number and then the door style. So to adjust this, we're going to edit the fields, and we're going to change mark to be at the top, family, then type. So I'm just moving these up. Level, so I'll bump level up. And then thickness. And then height. Then width. And then head height. And then finish, frame material, type comments, heat transfer coefficient, solar heat gain coefficient. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And now you'll notice that all the values updated to illustrate the way that I wanted them to appear. Now we're going to make a new sheet down below. We're going to call it new sheet, D size, and we're going to name it from down below here to A801. So we're numbering it to A801. And we're going to call it door and window schedule. Now we want to bring that door schedule that we just created onto the sheet, and we're just going to paste it right there. Just set it there. Now, you want to stretch the columns to make things look proper. So you'll notice these little blue lines. To make them look proper, I don't want to see doubled up values like oak stain there. I want it to be one line. I want painted pine to be one line. I want low VOC rated to be one line. I want the U value to be one line. And what this is going to do is it's going to level out items in the schedule to make it fit the nicest way possible. I can adjust these back as well. Notice that Mark got messed up, so I'm going to just kind of do that. Now that looks pretty dang good. So stretching these columns is very important. You can deleting, changing sizes and types in the schedule do affect the building model. So obviously if I'm in the door schedule and I were to change this door to something else, it's going to update the model. Now what I can also do is I can click highlight in model and it's going to show me that element in the model. So it's saying that it shows multiple times for different views, so I can say show. So it's showing me the most popular views that this is in, and I can tab through and it tells me. Now, there's my 3D view, and now I've highlighted it in the model. So that helps out quite a bit. So we're going to go back to level 1, and we're going to see that that door is there. Now, we've changed the values in those schedules. Now let's create a Windows schedule. So we've created a door schedule. It looks fairly decent. There are some values that can be adjusted and changed. You should go through and change your finishes and framing materials. You should update your notes to be accurate and representative. This is still a bit condensed, so if I drag them out, it now looks much better. I can double click the schedule to go into the schedule, and I can change the mark values here, and that's how I can quickly renumber them. Now, one thing to be careful of when you're doing this is they may not be the numbers that you want to use for those marks. So the mark value is just strictly the counter that's placed. So if I go back to level 1, not in the ceiling plan, but here, you're going to notice that those values are adjusted. So door 2, door 3. So just understand that the schedules are very powerful. I can close out of these views here up top, just so that I have 2 views shown. And I can actually close out of this view, hit view 3D, and then I can type in WT. Oops, sorry, not here. We want to set that to 1. We can click in white space and hit WT, and it'll window tile. And then I can click in and highlight in model that door. Or I can select this and highlight that door. And it's going to show it in different views. So it's important to know that that's a possibility, that as you're selecting through things, it's going to change them. Now, if I wanted to, if I highlighted this door, let's choose the garage door because it's easier to see. If I wanted to change this door to a different value, notice that it's updating. Oh, it actually didn't update. Let's see if that's interesting. I'm surprised that that didn't change. It's supposed to change. It may not have changed because we've manipulated the value. We want to leave it where it's at. Oh, I changed mark 1. That's the problem. I want to change door 2, not door 1. So I'm going to change this to this, and now it's updated. So just note that that's based on what you're selecting here, it's going to update what's in your model. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to undo a couple more times just to make sure I have it correct. Everything looks good. And we're going to continue on to our Windows schedule. So we're going to go up to View. We're going to go up to Schedule. We're going to hit Schedule Quantities. We're going to zoom down to Windows and find the correct category, Windows. And then we're going to hit OK because we just want the default Windows schedule. We will set up the schedule to have the following columns. We want the count of how many windows there are. We want the family. We want the head height. We want the heat transfer coefficient. We want the height. We want the level. We want the solar heat gain coefficient. We want the type marks, the type comments. Sorry, I said type mark. So in this particular case, we're just going to choose mark. We want the type comments. We can also choose, there's type mark, and the width. And I'm gonna by holding shift, it's gonna select multiple things, so I've made that mistake. So if you're selecting multiple things, just understand real quickly that you're highlighting one value at a time. If I hold control, I can select multiple. If I hold shift down to manufacture, it's gonna select what wasn't there. So just know that. If I hold control and select over what I've selected, it'll deselect. So I'm going to continue from solar heat gain coefficient. I want type comments, type mark, and width. And I'm going to go ahead and hit add and OK. And now I have my window schedule. So I can close this out. I have all my windows. You can go ahead and type paint white in the first type comment. So type comments, we're going to type in caps, paint white. Everything else is not in caps, so it wouldn't hurt to keep these consistent. It's up to you. Notice that I changed that and it changed every other value to paint white. So that's important. What happened was I changed a type value, and because I changed that type value, it's going to update all of those windows. So we're going to drag the window schedule on the door and window schedule sheet. So we're going to go down to A801. We're going to grab window schedule. Notice it took a second because there's a lot of windows. So we're going to place this in space right here. We have a lot of windows because we have 8 levels. I showed you how adjusting these values will extend the length so that it's not using so much real estate on the page. So we're going to kind of keep doing that across the top here to get it to kind of clean up. Granted, you can only go so far because we have only so large of a sheet. There's that. I can break the schedule here, so there's this little break mark. So I can break it 2 or 3 times. Now, in order to get these back, there's a little move arrow, and if I drag that move arrow and highlight over the schedule on each one of these, it will actually condense it back. More often than not, you'll forget how to do this, but it's important to know that. So we use the move icon and we use the break. What I'm going to do is kind of align this to the left side of this schedule here. Notice how it snaps. It's lagging a bit because there's quite a bit of content. And then what I can do is I can slowly migrate these to be smaller if needed. It's going to update each sheet. So I can kind of come back. Notice that it's starting to adjust this value, so be careful of that. Slide it back. And now we're going to slide it to the right. We want it to snap to this schedule. There you go. So the schedule properties adjust the database and appearance of the schedule. We want to change the fields to the following names and put them in a particular order. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change count. So we're going to double click this schedule. We're going to change count to be QTY, which is quantity. We're going to change type mark. Actually, let's change the fields first. That way they're in the correct order, and then we'll go through and change the values. So we want count, and then we want type mark, so we're going to move that up. We want level, we're going to move that up. We want family, height, width, head height, heat transfer coefficient, solar heat gain coefficient, and type comments. So we're going to hit OK. Now I can go down the list. We want window number. I'm doing them in caps for this particular, for these headers. Floor number. And I'm just tabbing through and typing. Window style, tab, height, tab, width, tab, head height, tab, U value, SHGC, and notes. So there we go. Those are all in order. So we saw how large that schedule was on the sheet. It was pretty massive. That's a lot of information. Can you imagine typing that in an AutoCAD schedule? It would take a very long time. So that's the power behind Revit for these schedules. Notice that the quantity is not working real well and that there's a ton of ones. We can actually left click on the schedule to go into it, go to properties, go to sorting and grouping, and then under sorting and grouping, we can uncheck itemize every instance. Itemizing every instance is just not necessary because we have the count. So if we hit OK, actually we don't want to hit OK yet. Notice everything disappeared, don't freak out. Hit sorting and grouping. What we want to do is sort by type. The reason nothing's showing is there's nothing to sort. So if I itemize every instance and hit OK, everything's there. But I actually want to sort it. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to sort by type, mark, then by level. And I'm going to switch those values to adjust the schedule on the sheet, controlling the row and height and length. So I'm going to hit OK. And you'll notice that if I adjust these values, we're going to kind of tidy this thing up. So we're just tidying this thing up. Looks a lot better. Now when I go into my door and window schedule, you'll see that that looks a lot nicer. It's a lot more organized. There's not as many values. We can also group schedule parameters, so you can group parameters within a schedule. In the door schedule, we will group the dimensions section. So right now we don't have notes showing up there, but let's go back up to door schedule real quick. We'll go in here and group dimensions. So we want to left click in the THK cell on the left. So we're selecting there. You will drag your mouse to the right and you'll notice that the cells turn black. So we have these as dimensions and we want to group these dimensions. So those have turned black. Now we want to group them. Bear with me for a second here. I'm testing a couple things. So if I hold Shift as well, or if I hold Control, it's only selecting those columns. Now, what I want to do is I selected the wrong value. I had selected E, F, and G. You want to select to the left of thick. So I'm going to select to the left to where it turns black. And I'm going to drag to width, and I'm going to hit Group. So I just selected from here, clicked once, and dragged the mouse, and hit Group. Now I'm going to call this Dimensions. If I could type. I can't type today. So those are grouped. In the door schedule, we will group the dimensions. We've grouped those. We've left-clicked on the thick cell and dragged to the right to select these and grouped them. So we're doing that real well. Those are now grouped. We've called those dimensions. We do want to include head height in this. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing again. We're going to drag over to here and group those. But notice that this is now creating a group within a group. So we're going to ungroup that and then just type dimensions in again. So make sure my caps is on, dimensions. So I've got that in there. So copying schedules depending on the use or development of the project and using transfer project standards to reuse these settings is important because you can actually reuse the schedules that you've set up in other projects. So transferring your schedules can be very beneficial. So in this particular lecture, you have learned to create a door and window schedule, change its order, fields, filter, and sort. You learned the schedule is directly linked to the building model. If it changes in the model, it changes in the schedule. If it changes in the schedule, it changes in the model. We're going to save this as revit2019demo11. But before I do that, I want to go back to my window schedule real quick and take a look at it. I'm still not quite satisfied with the way that this is being organized. So right now I have quantity in the front and I have 2 windows. So something got deleted when I went flying through here. So if I edit these fields, I'm actually missing family. It looks like it's down here. Let me look at the organization here. Okay, so I do want quantity there. The family's where it's at, so that's correct. I want to sort and group the families. So we're going to try to sort this and see what happens. Nothing happened. Sorting and grouping can be a little bit challenging just to understand what's happening. So be very mindful of that. We're not itemizing every instance. We've grouped them together. So I have these sizes. The reason why this list is so large is I've created a different set of windows based on different sizes. So it's only going to show this fixed window at the correct interval of based on quantities. So on level 1, I have window 4 and one of them. And so that's why it looks like there's a lot going on. I got a little bit psyched out there because there is a lot going on. But one thing to understand is that this fixed window that's a 4 by 3 by 6 foot head height is on level 1, and then the next instance is on level 2. So we're sorting it by the floor or by the level as well as what the window number is. So that helps kind of tidy it up. We can go back into sorting and grouping and kind of see how this is adjusting and understand it. You can also get grand totals. So I just wanted to go over those real quickly so that you can look at what's going on and see how that's adjusting and affecting your overall schedule here. Notice again that by pulling these out, it's going to tidy that up a bit more. I want it to be fairly consistent from this schedule to the door schedule. And as long as I have a fairly consistent schedule, I feel confident enough. So we'll go ahead and hit File, Save As, Project, Demo 11, Save. I'll see you in the next lecture.